Uwaifo. The rise of the helpless one. The night was quiet in the small village of Ozara, save for the crickets that sang their endless song. A cool breeze carried whispers of fate, and in a tiny mud hut, a boy sat beside his weary mother, his eyes filled with both pain and unshaken resolve. Uwaifo was his name, a boy with a great destiny on his shoulders. Since the death of his father, Uwaifo and his mother had suffered under the cruel hand of his uncle, Ibiam. A man of great wealth but a heart of stone, Ibiam had seized his brother's land, leaving Uwaifo and his mother with nothing but a leaking hut and empty stomachs. He spread lies in the village, convincing everyone that Uwaifo was cursed, that he would never amount to anything. The young men of the village, eager to win Ibiam's favor, mocked and bullied Uwaifo, treating him as the scum of the earth. When Uwaifo's father was alive, their home was filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. But all that changed the moment death snatched him away. Like a vulture sensing weakness, Ibiam swooped in, claiming that the land and properties Uwaifo's father left behind belonged to him. "Your father owed me a great debt," he lied. "You and your mother have no place here anymore." Ibiam spread word among the farmers and traders, warning them not to sell food to Uwaifo's mother. "She is cursed. She killed her husband," he whispered. "Her son is a wretched thing, doomed to bring ruin upon those who help him." Fearful of Ibiam's wrath, the villagers obeyed. There were nights when Uwaifo and his mother had nothing but water to drink. Ibiam would send some gang to threaten Uwaifo. They kicked him, punched him, and laughed as he fell to the ground. "Stay where you belong, filth," one of them spat. But even as Uwaifo bled, he did not cry out. He stood, wiped the blood from his mouth, and looked them in the eyes. "You will all bow before me one day," his gaze seemed to say. But what they did not know was that Uwaifo was no ordinary young man. He carried wisdom beyond his years, a strength that refused to be crushed, and a spirit that burned like a raging fire. The boy, young and determined, would go into the forest, setting traps for games. He learned the secrets of the land, surviving on wildlife, grabbing wild fruits and roots for himself and his mother to eat and survive, while his mother watched, her heart aching at the sight of her son growing up in hardship. Ibiam's cruelty reached its peak when he saw that despite the suffering, Uwaifo had not been broken. The boy carried himself with quiet dignity, and worse, he was growing into a powerfully strong and intelligent young man. So Ibiam ordered the village youths, those same boys who sought his favor, to attack Uwaifo. One evening, as Uwaifo was returning from the bush, carrying some game he caught from hunting, the gang surrounded him as usual. They thought they could beat and bully him like they used to. They didn't know they were in for a shocker. Uwaifo dodged their punches and kicks, and from the experience he gained having lived his life in the wild trapping wild animals, he unleashed a flurry of kicks and punches on them, sending them scurrying away thoroughly beaten up. One fateful day, a great proclamation shook the land. The king of Ozara Kingdom sought a new advisor, a man of strength and wisdom who could guide the kingdom through uncertain times. A grand challenge was set, a series of trials to test intelligence, strength, and courage. The winner would serve as the king's advisor. Laughter erupted in the village when Uwaifo stepped forward. "Even a goat has a better chance than him," one of the bullies sneered. But Uwaifo paid them no attention. He knew fate was calling. The trials were grueling. The first tested strength. Uwaifo lifted the sacred stone, a feat even the strongest men struggled with. The second trial tested wisdom and intelligence. He solved riddles that left elders speechless. The final test was of courage. He was able to walk up to the king and to the elders in council and spoke to them about so many misjudgments going on in the kingdom against the widows and the downtrodden, and how people gang up against the fatherless to mistreat them, citing himself as an example. The king was very impressed with his courage and was happy with the solutions he suggested. The people gasped. The king watched in awe. And when the trials ended, there was no doubt, Uwaifo had won. The king, a man of great wisdom himself, saw something rare in Uwaifo. "You are more than what this village has made of you," he declared. "From this day forth, you are now my advisor." The village erupted in shock. The same young men who had once mocked him now bowed before him. Even the elders, who had ignored his suffering, now sought his counsel. And then came the moment that shook the land. Ibiam, the once mighty oppressor, stood before Uwaifo. His face, full of grief and arrogance, bore the weight of shame. "Forgive me," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was blind to your greatness." Uwaifo gazed at his uncle, not with anger, but with the wisdom that had carried him this far. "The land you stole from us, return it. My mother shall suffer no more. And as for you, let this be a lesson: never underestimate the one whom fate has blessed." Uwaifo's time in the palace became an eye-opener for everyone in the palace, and the villagers at large. It was during his service at the palace, that those gangs his uncle sent to bully him realized how compassionate he was, and they regretted their ills as he could have used his position to destroy them. His ability to resolve issues, and bring uncommon peace in the kingdom was exceptional. The mischievous and unrepentant Ibiam could not bear to see Uwaifo rise. How could a boy he once trampled upon become the king's advisor? It burned his pride like fire, and so, driven by envy, he devised a plan. One morning, Ibiam stormed into the royal palace, throwing himself before the king. "My king," he cried, his voice thick with false concern. "You have made a terrible mistake. This boy, Uwaifo, is not who he seems. He is a trickster, a deceiver. He seeks to take your throne." Gasps echoed through the court. All eyes turned to Uwaifo, but the young man remained calm, his expression unreadable. The king, wise and patient, leaned forward. "Do you have proof, Ibiam?" Ibiam smirked, thinking his moment of triumph had come. "Yes, my king. I heard him plotting in the dead of the night. He speaks with spirits, conspiring against you. I even have witnesses," Ibiam gloated. He called in his thugs who would usually do his dirty jobs, to come and testify to the lies he concocted against Uwaifo. But to his amazement, the thugs dropped the bombshell on him, by divulging his entire plot right there, in front of everyone. They confessed to how Ibiam had bribed them to bear false witness against Uwaifo. They went further to alert the king of an imminent threat to his life, as Ibiam had already bribed one of his maidservants to poison his food, simply because he had his eyes set on the throne. Ibiam's smug grin vanished. His face turned pale as whispers spread. He was dumbfounded and shaken to the bones because he never expected his thugs to give him away. After hearing these, all hell broke loose. The king's eyes darkened. A stunned silence fell upon the court. "You are the traitor," the king's voice was like a thunder. "You sought to deceive me, to destroy Uwaifo, and to take my throne." Ibiam fell to his knees, shaking. My king, I, enough." The king raised his hand, his eyes now upon Uwaifo. "This young man, whom you called a deceiver, has proven himself wise, loyal, and just. And you, Ibiam, have revealed your own wickedness." Turning to Uwaifo, the king smiled. "From this day forward, you are not just my advisor. You are now also my right-hand man, the second most powerful man in this kingdom." The court erupted in cheers. Uwaifo had found favor in the sight of the king, while Ibiam, in his foolishness, greed and mischief had sealed his own downfall. From that day, Uwaifo ruled beside the king, not with vengeance, but with justice. The boy who was once mocked became the man whom even kings trusted. And as his mother sat in her new home, watching her son rise like the sun over the kingdom, she knew, destiny had finally spoken. And it had spoken Uwaifo's name. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for more interesting stories.